Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, this is Steven Schinder of Yesshift. My dad is currently traveling. You know, uh, he'll be home and back at work in a little while. But in the meantime, I wanted to go live and talk about Symphonic Music of Yes, which just turned 30 today, October 26, 2023. Yeah, this it originally came out in 93, and I know this is kind of last minute, kind of random time. I would have promoted this broadcast had I known for sure this was gonna happen. Like, I had an idea that this was gonna happen, and then some stuff happened, and finally able to come live and talk about it. Let me just make sure the broadcast looks good. Um, okay, yeah, I can hear myself. It sounds pretty good. So yeah, if you've listened to Symphonic Music of Yes, chime in. I posted about it in a couple places, saw some comments. The I would say the reception for this back then and even today is very mixed. Now, obviously, I was born a year after it came out, so I wasn't necessarily around to experience the reception firsthand. But based on some older forums I'd read some years back, it seemed like people were very underwhelmed by this, and I can see why. And earlier I saw some comments. Someone said it was forgettable, and someone else said that um, the promotion of when they were promoting this album on a talk show, Regis and Kathy, that it was kind of insane in a bad way. But yeah, so I'm evaluating this, and well, first off, let me talk about how I first became aware of this because it's kind of an oddity, really. And um, I would say probably 2007 ish, maybe 2008, when I was reading the Wikipedia articles about, you know, basically, I knew the Yes story thanks to the Yes Years documentary and later the Classic Artists documentary, um, and eventually Chris Welch's book. But I wanted to see the way that Wikipedia summarized things, and they mentioned, oh, Bill Bruford's last contribution to anything Yes related was Symphonic Music of Yes, and then I thought to myself, wait a minute, what's this? And then I did some digging, looked up what that was, and basically this was one of multiple London Philharmonic Orchestra albums where they did their take on music by various rock bands. Sorry, I'm just sharing into groups on my phone. It's not as easy as it looks. Like going on my phone to share this while talking, it's hard for me to focus on both things, but I'll make it work. And the orchestral arrangements, I believe it's arranged and conducted is the credit. I'll look at the credits real quick. I actually have my own CD of it. I got it like maybe 2008, 2009. I definitely listened to it early 2009. So yeah, Dee Palmer, as she is known now, was involved in this. The orchestral arrangements. And Adam Sears from Will Bait Scarp reminded me earlier that Alan Parsons was involved in the production of it. And of course, in terms of Yes Guests, you get Steve Howe and Bill Bruford, who are throughout all of it, and John Anderson only guests on a couple of tracks. I remember being kind of surprised by that when I was first reading up on it way back in the day. But you also get some other musicians. Obviously there's the orchestra, but you also get familiar names like Julian Kolbeck on keyboards. He did additional keyboards for Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe. And you also have Keith West, vocalist from Tomorrow, one of Steve Howe's early bands. And you also have Tim Harries on bass from Bill Bruford's Earthworks. So you get a few people from each of these different bands that they're each involved in or were involved in. And this is a strange time in Yes history. Like I said, this was in 1993. It came out October 26th that year, was recorded in the summer. And in that summer, the Yes that was around was recording the Talk album. And I think it was also around this time that Rick Wakeman, um, he was trying to make it work with the 90125 lineup. It seemed like it was a six piece for a while, but around this time, he just there was scheduling issues, so he wasn't able to make that work, and so it just ended up being the 90125 lineup as we know. Um, and so I'm just typing this out. So John Anderson was really the only current member at that time who was on this, and yet Steve Howe was involved and Bill Bruford was surprisingly involved. I'm not really sure what made him agree because at that time with the Union tour, he was very disenchanted with ABWH becoming Yes and having to be involved in that whole thing. But you also got a Roger Dean cover on this, which really strengthens that Yes connection. So, yeah, I'll show you my copy of the CD in just a moment. Uh, just making sure. Okay. All right. So let me just make sure it's on camera. Okay. Yeah. So this is the CD I got. I think Dad might have gotten it for me after I asked him to order it for me. I think that may have been how it happened. And you got these liner notes. Actually, it looks kind of like a poster. So, um, oh, and you got the disc right there. Let's see. So the the artwork for this, it feels very much in the vein of Union. Uh, yeah, like the colors of it, kind of Ralph McQuarrie esque, and it folds out, feels kind of like a poster. So you get that with the credits, and you also get these photos. So you see like some of the players involved. I think that's really neat and pretty in depth, like showing you who plays on what, which I really appreciate. But like I said, this was kind of a surprise to me when I first found out about it because I'm like, how can you have an album with Yes music and not have a vocalist like John Anderson sing on all of the tracks? But I think over time I've come to realize, it's called Symphonic Music of Yes, so you probably want to showcase the orchestra. And speaking of Yes orchestra connections, I mean, we already know Time and a Word had an orchestra, uh, and later on there would be Magnification and Symphonic Live, which I I think everyone would agree, like those were a better stab at trying to mesh Yes with orchestral music. And of course, on the last couple albums, I think the orchestras they use on those on the Quest and Mirror to the Sky were used very well, like adding flavors to the new music. And so it seems like John Anderson and Steve Howe at various points have been kind of the at least that's the vibe I get, the instigators wanting to get Yes and mix it with symphonic stuff, orchestras, like make it very symphonic, which I mean, Yes music has epics, so it works. Symphonic Music of Yes I would say feels kind of like maybe they were testing the waters with that. I think it was around this time that either John Anderson said, or maybe someone claimed that John Anderson said that Tales from Topographic Oceans with an orchestra would be an interesting idea. So I can't really fault them for getting involved with this type of thing. Yes, plus an orchestra. It sounds like a match made in heaven. But I feel like there are certain points where they could have gone further with this idea of an orchestra playing Yes music. And I mean, eventually they did go further with it on Symphonic Live quite successfully. Um, Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling on, but let me just like tell you my impressions of the tracks on this, especially on this most recent listen. So first off, you open with Roundabout, as you do. It's one of Yes's greatest hits. So, how can you not include that? Um, and this is one of the two tracks that Anderson sings on. I should mention, like, when this was recorded, list specifically, recorded and mixed from July 12th to August 9th, 1993 at Conch Studios, London. But the London Philharmonic Orchestra conducting and digital recording of that itself took place across 2 days, July 22nd and 23rd. So it makes you wondering if the Yes musicians and their colleagues recorded before and after them. That's why you get that time span there. So Roundabout, you of course get John on vocals, and Steve Howe's guitar really stands out. And for a little bit, it feels like a great idea, but then you realize, oh, this is another abridged version of Roundabout. My dad and I have talked about how um, when it comes to Roundabout, we would rather it include the whole thing. Although on the 35th anniversary tour, they played a shuffle version quite successfully in their acoustic set, and where omitting the middle section about the eagle and whatnot, like it didn't feel like it was missing much. Whereas here, I noticed the absence a lot more, and it leaves a bit to be desired. You also get Palmer on synthesizer and vocoder on this one, Keith West on backing vocals, and for Julian Kolbeck, there's a Hammond organ solo. I do like the bit of drumming that Bill does. He drums throughout this, but there's a bit where, like toward the end, it's like I can't like vocalize it accurately, but it feels like really strong toward the end, which sounded really cool. But yeah, that's a 6 minute and 9 second rendition of Roundabout. Now, if you think that that is absurd, the next track is Close to the Edge, and it's only 7 minutes and 38 seconds. Um, yeah. I see a comment from Robert Nasir. Kind of fun, certainly strange times for the band. Yeah, definitely. Um, and I'll get back into like sort of the context of some of the other orchestral albums that were coming out around the time. Um, so I feel like I'm saying so a lot. My gosh. Close to the Edge. Um, Again, this is an abridged version and it's all instrumental. It begins with the bird sounds that you hear on the usual version. But this is, with instrumental versions of Yes songs, my test for those is okay, can I karaoke this? Can I sing against this? And for a bit, I was able to with Close to the Edge, but then it kept jumping to like ahead to different sections in the song because they're trying to keep these within a certain amount of time. Now, the full length of this CD was, I think it was about 60 minutes, maybe a bit less. Let me double check that. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, so about 54 minutes, 56 seconds. So I know that at that time, ABWH was about 60 minutes, I think. Let's see, CD run time 1993, because I know that at some point the the highest amount of runtime on CD was maybe 80 minutes. I see something is telling me 74 minutes. Um, so I kind of wonder if maybe they could have gone longer with some of these songs, or maybe omitted a couple. Um, but yeah, I don't have a concrete answer for that. But Close to the Edge, I feel like it's, upon first listen, you get an idea of what it's like with an orchestra. And to be honest, listening to it, it's like, man, I kind of would rather be listening to the original version or the symphonic live version. Like I said, when they tried this again with the full band touring with the orchestra, they did it successfully. Like some people even call the symphonic live version one of their favorite, if not their absolute favorite rendition of Close to the Edge. So I feel like this is kind of a tease of things that could have been done much better and sort of a reminder of the better source material. Um, I see Andrzej Stofa says, listen to it once. Wait. Wow, okay. That reminds me of Rick Wakeman, like allegedly throwing away the Union CD or cassette, whatever it was, a couple times. But then you get Wondrous Stories, and I think this one passes the karaoke test for me. It's 3 minutes, 51 seconds, and I was able to sing along like pretty much all of the lyrics, except maybe a hearing section or two, the hearing. But for the most part, I feel like it passes that test. I don't quite remember if Wondrous Stories was ever played on the Symphonic Tour. I'm just Googling that. Trying to find that on Forgotten Yesterdays while I can. Let's see. Or I could even look up the Symphonic Live DVD. It's been a minute. It's like I love that DVD, but it's been a minute. Um, yeah, I don't see Wondrous Stories on the track list for that DVD. Um, but I think this one was maybe one of the more successful tracks, even if it doesn't do a whole lot new. You know, it's kind of, it's closer to the source. So I guess that counts for something. And then you get I've Seen All Good People, and this is another one where you have John Anderson singing, but you also get the London Community Gospel Choir. Um, I should mention though that it's not the whole song; it's just the All Good People section, and I think it sounds pretty good. And I mean, 3 minutes 48 seconds, and I'm sure if my dad were here, I kind of wonder like if he'd appreciate that it's just a shorter version, like just that part. But then again, I don't know. For me personally, the Your Move section I prefer over the All Good People section. But it is kind of neat that they got this choir in that one. Then we get the next track, which I think is kind of an odd choice, Mood for a Day. This one you have the English Chamber Orchestra, actually. So maybe that counts for like the recording dates that I mentioned before are kind of different. But yeah, the Steve Howe's solo piece, but with an orchestra. It sounds pretty good, but again, for collections that are supposed to highlight Yes music, I have to wonder like why include a Steve Howe solo piece? I kind of had that same question with the In a Word Yes box set where you clap was thrown in, and but it's yeah I don't know. There might have been a couple other solo pieces on there as well. Maybe the Fish was on there, but like I feel like solo pieces on Yes collections or compilations, it's I don't know, it's just weird to me. But in any case, it sounds pretty good. You got Steve on the Spanish guitar. I saw some other people saying that Mood for a Day was the highlight for them on this. I think Peter Damore may have commented that earlier. I'll have to look at the comments from that previous post in a bit. Um, so yeah, that's track 5, and then track 6, you get Owner of a Lonely Heart. So right there, we have all three of the major hits from Yes. Kind of a surprising one to do, given that Steve Howe is playing guitar on this. And I think this one also pretty much passed the karaoke test. I feel like I was able to, you know, you I think you could sing pretty much all the words on this version. Okay, yeah, Peter Demore did say loved the Mood for a Day on it. Okay. Um, yeah, I'll see if I can read some other comments as well after this rundown. And then the next one, if you're not looking at the track list, you may think that And You and I is starting, but it turns out to be Survival. And this is another one with the English Chamber Orchestra. The other ones are with the London Philharmonic, unless I specify otherwise. But this also has the London Community Gospel Choir singing the parts where, uh, it's mostly instrumental, but then we get to the part where it's like survival, you get the choir singing. And I think it sounds really nice. And this is 4 minutes, 15 seconds. And it almost passed the karaoke test for me, but I think during like the second part, the after that first chorus part, the verses are kind of the verse part is shortened, so you get to survival with the choir again, um, more quickly. Which, yeah, again, like I wish it was the full length of the original, but sadly not. But for the most part, I think it sounds pretty good, and it's kind of a surprise to include that on this. Also, no time and a word songs on here. I guess they figured, well, we did those with an orchestra already, so just, if you're gonna choose something from the original lineup, let's choose something for the first album. Which, I mean, if you're gonna pick one track from that first album, I think Survival fits the bill. I kind of wish they had tried that on the Symphonic Live tour. But anyway, next you get Heart of the Sunrise, 7 minutes 47 seconds. I enjoyed some of it, but again, you can't really sing the whole song, uh, like against this instrumentation because it keeps jumping forward at certain points. Again, to me, that's kind of distracting when, especially when I want to be able to sing against these instrumentals. But then we get Soon, and surprisingly, it starts off with Steve Howe doing spoken word, basically like words from Gates of Delirium. You hear him say, "Listen, should we fight forever, knowing as we do know, fear destroys us." And then the rest of that Soon, it sounds pretty good, in my opinion, and it does jump ahead a little bit, I think. I listened to it earlier, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it does jump a little bit. And then you get Starship Trooper, which unfortunately cuts out the Disillusion section. So you only have Life Seeker and Verm. But the opening of it, I mean, it makes for a triumphant opening to a concluding track on this. And the music is decent, but again, I feel like this was done much better on. Uh, Wait, actually, did they play this on the symphonic tour? I have this like in my head, but hmm. Oh yeah, they did. It's just in the middle of the set. Yeah, as opposed to the end. That was kind of weird. um, but yeah, so overall, an interesting sort of obscure, I guess you could say, test for this sort of concept, but one that could have gone much further. And eventually they did go much further with Symphonic Live, the Symphonic Tour, and did it more successfully there, really achieved that dream of Yes with an orchestra, utilized it to its full potential, and you got the singing and the orchestra and all the band members of that lineup at that time, uh, plus Tom Brislin, that was a bonus. So yeah, a very odd release. I'm just looking at the liner notes, seeing if there's anything else that I wanted to mention. Oh, it mentions like the different companies that each Yes member and alumni appeared courtesy of. That's kind of funny. Recorded, produced, and engineered by Alan Parsons. And like I mentioned, Dee Palmer arranged and conducted it. Album production by Howe and Palmer. Okay, that's interesting. Um, I think this was released on the RCA Victor label. Um, I should also bring up like D. Palmer's background. Maybe if you're a Jethro Tull fan, you'll know that history. I'm just pulling this up real quick. I had it up earlier, but I had to close my tab. Yeah, so providing orchestral arrangements on various Jethro Tull albums from 1968 to 1976. One of them being a Passion Play, which is me and my dad's favorite Jethro Tull album. And as a full-time member on some albums 77 to 79, and also appeared on Nightcap, The Unreleased Masters, and Why That Madison Square Garden 78. Okay. But even before Symphonic Music of Yes, Palmer did some symphonic arrangements on other releases, like A Classic Case, which also known as Classic Jethro Tull, according to what I'm looking at, released in 1986. And I think that was with a different, or yeah, it's with the London Symphony Orchestra. And then in 87, again with London Symphony Orchestra, you got We Know What We Like, which 99% sure that's Genesis, just based on that title. And then 91, Orchestral Maneuvers, the music of Pink Floyd. Interestingly, uh, well, before I get to that, so after this, Palmer also did Orchestral Sgt. Pepper's uh, in 95 and Passing Open Windows, a symphonic tribute to Queen in 96. So after Symphonic Music of Yes, from what I could tell, there were a couple other London Philharmonic Orchestra albums where they took a stab at certain rock bands, but D. Palmer's not involved on those ones, from what I can tell. Uh, One of them was Symphonic, or what's it called? Us and Them Symphonic Pink Floyd. And that one came out in October 1995, so, same month, different year. And it also had a Roger Dean cover. It's the one with the dragon in a forest. But then 2 years later, in October 97, you get Kashmir Symphonic Led Zeppelin, which does not have a Roger Dean cover. So I think for a time, this was kind of a, a release for like every other year. Like they would try to release, the symphonic blah, whichever rock band it is. So it was a bit of a trend, and I'm not really sure what the reception was like for these other albums. I'm kind of curious if people received them better or what. But yeah, quite a strange moment in history as far as Yes music is concerned. Yeah, I mean, it's not even a full Yes album, it's just an orchestral album that features a few Yes members and their fellow musicians that they've worked with. Uh, the main extent of promoting this album, as far as I could tell, there was you can find this on YouTube. Regis and Kathy. There's the interview about this, well, which really doesn't provide much info about this CD at all, but Steve Howe and Bill Bruford appeared on that show, Regis and Kathy, and they played Roundabout, accompanied by Tim Harries on bass. And surprisingly, you might think it's instrumental, but actually Steve Howe sings lead on that performance. And I feel like that performance was not the best way to promote this album. You know, it's a symphonic album, it has an orchestra, and maybe the space that of the studio that they had, maybe that factored into it. Maybe they couldn't have even just a few members of the orchestra, but I feel like it's not very representative of the idea that they were going with this particular CD. So it was a strange way to promote it, one that I think wasn't that successful, really. So yeah, very strange decisions. Uh, Let me see if I can read some comments. Philip Kilroy said, only heard it a couple times. On paper, great idea. Final product didn't work. Gary Betts said, I'm afraid my memory of it is it just doesn't work on any level. Bob Kosturko says, it sounded like a marching band playing Yes songs, utterly forgettable. There were a couple others I read already, I think. Um, Oh, Hogne Bo Peterson. Yeah, it was a missed opportunity. Not very good. Don't own a copy anymore. And that performance on American Breakfast Show. Um, Ed Arnold said, I listen to it occasionally. Steve, Bill, and John Anderson are featured performers. Gilly Good News said, had moments, survival, some nice deep brass stabs for Squire's bass notes and close to the edge, well arranged, enjoyable stuff. Had the CD back in the day that Kathy and Regis performance saying. Um, Nick Cachopo, it's okay, but the version of Roundabout is horror comedy. Wow. Um, let's see. I think there might have been like some other comments. Let me see. Yeah, because like with Roundabout, you know, it's it's a big ask to want like a shortened version of it, you know. Do. Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can like see other comments on this. Okay, I think I may have found one of the other places I posted. Um, David Murray said, bought it at the time of release, forgot all about it. I'll need to listen to it again. At the time, I remembered being disappointed with it. Strange album. Maybe I'll think more of it this time around. I'm sure John left the project and pure Steve and Bill had to promote it. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering what the timeline of that was. Like, was John asked to only be on those two songs, or was he involved initially and then left? I'm kind of curious about that. Ed Plasinski Sr., I have not listened to it in a while, but I did like it. I did see the tour when they had the orchestra. Oh, I guess he's referring to the symphonic tour. Andrew Keegan says, was listening to this the other day. The orchestration and close to the edge is magnificent. Okay. Michael Jerry Kane listened to some of it yesterday. Wonder Stories soon. Starship Trooper standout tracks for me. Jim Henson, it definitely has its moments. The version of Close to the Edge is beautiful. Okay, yeah, so you get varying opinions. I feel like you get the idea. Like some people like it, some people not really. Richard Verbergen or Verbergen, I like the CD. Play it loud. I think when I played this to Dad after I got it, like way back in the late 2000s, I think what we came to as a conclusion is, this is nice music to put on like in the background while I think it was while he was making dinner or we were making dinner or something. But yeah, I feel like this isn't necessarily the type of music where you give it your full attention and expect something big and bombastic to happen. Like I could see myself, if I put it on again, it might be just to have it on as background. Um, Scott Albert says Soon was really good and it had some moments, but there were cringe moments. Um, okay. So yeah, I feel like you get the picture. Like mixed at best, I guess I would say. And it's not hard to see why. Like again, like the concept had potential, but it wasn't really fully realized at that time. It's an interesting piece of Yes history, but perhaps one for the completists, or if you'd like to see the evolution of Yes with the orchestra, like sort of the climb with that over the years. But yeah, so that's pretty much my thoughts on Symphonic Music of Yes. I do kind of want to check out some of those other orchestral albums I mentioned, but I'm not sure when I'll get around to listening to them, let alone if they'd be like full episodes like this. Maybe if I do listen to them, I'll mention briefly that I did on some future episode. We'll just have to see what happens. Um, but yeah, while we're winding down, I guess I should mention what the next couple episodes are going to be. So, Saturday, October 28th, we're having Stephen Lamb on our show, author of Yes, Every Album, Every Song. This is the revised edition that just came out, so it goes up to Mirror to the Sky. Stephen Lamb shared his thoughts on each of the songs on each of the albums. So Dad and I will have him on, uh, and we'll be talking about that and maybe a couple other Yes related topics. We already have stuff in mind. And I was planning on going to the Yes show here in Los Angeles on October 30th. Although I know that Steve Howe, maybe this is news to people if you're not on social media or don't get the emails, but I know that Steve Howe had a thumb injury. So a couple recent shows, like two recent shows, were canceled. I haven't seen anything about tonight's show being canceled, so kind of wondering if that's for sure still on. So, obviously, like what he needs to do to heal, and if things go well, then the concert on the 30th, I should be able to see it, if everything goes well, and be able to review that maybe the day after, or well, the day after is Halloween, but yeah, I don't know. I'll figure out a time to broadcast and give my review of it. And then November 2nd, Keith Emerson's birthday, um, be putting out a review of the Keith Emerson box set Variations, a 20 CD box set. It's it's quite a breadth of material. It's really good stuff. So I think the time for that is noon Pacific time on November 2nd. Let me just double check. Um, let's see. November 2nd. Yeah, noon Pacific. And I know at some point, like later in November, we'll also review the 8 CD John Wetton box set, An Extraordinary Life. And there's also a Greg Lake collection coming out on November 10th on what would have been his birthday. So, yeah, maybe that'll be, if you're a prog fan, that could be up your alley as well. Um, and November 7th, of course, is the 40th anniversary of 90125. The tentative plan is my dad will go live on Drum Talk TV, the page where we talk about drumming and drummers and even even interviewed drummers on there. So there will be a Drum Talk TV vlog at noon Pacific time on that day. And then at 2 p.m. here on Yesshift, he and I will talk about the album 90125. So that's the tentative plan. If anything changes, we'll post about it. Um, but yeah, in the meantime, you can write to us, yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com, with any feedback, suggestions, um, show ideas. Just yesterday, we did a show idea from one of our followers, dream set lists for John Anderson's solo shows. And we also interviewed Michael Franklin and his brother Tim right before that. So check those out if you haven't already. You can find the episodes. We broadcast live facebook.com/yesshift and then post them after the fact to youtube.com/@yesshift and on various podcast platforms as well. You could just search Yesshift and you'll probably find us. But yeah, that's it for now, and I'll see you all soon.